Part 17. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wu Nian. Chapter 161. At night, Chen Mu watched the little guys flapping their wings and going to the island to find fresh water. After one night, the container made of branches was filled with fresh water. It's daytime. Chen Mu said, "Okay, you can rest." When the little guys heard this, they all returned to Chen Mu obediently. Chen Mu stretched out the branch, and the little guys knew what Chen Mu meant, so they came over and connected the aerial roots with Chen Mu's branch. Chen Mu stretched out a tree root and drilled into the fresh water, and then used his swallowing ability. Carbon dioxide, sunlight, and fresh water in the air all quickly poured into Chen Mu's body. Golden light penetrated Chen Mu's body from all directions, and fresh water turned into golden light and entered Chen Mu's body at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chen Mu's body grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. Part of the energy was also sent consciously by Chen Mu into the bodies of the 101 tree bird people, so that they could also obtain energy. Chen Mu's body size has grown significantly. Previously, Chen Mu was only about 8 meters tall, but the fresh water obtained through the efforts of these little guys yesterday, combined with Chen Mu's devouring ability. Chen Mu's height suddenly increased astonishingly. Chen Mu is now 11 meters tall and looks amazing. You know, when a banyan tree grows, it is not its main height. Its trunk also becomes thicker and stronger, and the crown growth will be more vigorous. The fresh water collected overnight brought Chen Mu not only the tree trunks became thicker and the crown became lush, but also the height increased so much. It can be said that there was a lot gained from this night. But for Chen Mu, is it just a few meters long? It's a little short, Chen Mu thought. It seems that we need to create more manpower. Thinking of doing it, it's daytime anyway. Chen Mu directly created more than 1,000 little guys this time, and then asked these little guys who had already worked to help Chen Mu explain his work. At night, the little guys who had finished charging flew out to collect fresh water with small wooden buckets in both hands. About half an hour passed. Lu Yi flew over in panic, and looked at Chen Mu at a loss. "Ancestor, one of our companions was attacked." It looked nervous and uneasy. Seeing this, Chen Mu was slightly startled. Under attack? Chen Mu has observed that this island is completely uninhabited. There are no humans here and there are no animals. How did they come to be attacked? But it's useless to think about it now. This matter is related to the process of obtaining fresh water. I have to go and take a look. Frankly speaking, as a banyan tree, it felt very comfortable to have its roots penetrate deeply into the soil and absorb water all the time. He himself was a little too lazy to move. But now things matter. Thinking of this, Chen Mu's body glowed with golden light. Under the gaze of greenery, Chen Mu's body turned into a griffin. Lu Yi was stunned and looked at Chen Mu in surprise. Chen Mu flapped his wings and said, "Let's go." Lu Yi came back to his senses, nodded, quickly flapped its wings, and left with Chen Mu. Chen Mu followed Lu Yi to the place where the accident occurred. A group of tree bird people were flying in the air. When they saw Chen Mu arriving, they looked at Chen Mu. Chen Mu looked at the animals attacking the tree bird people. At first glance, Chen Mu discovered that it was a group of kangaroos, and the group of kangaroos was beating a tree bird man. The tree bird man was blocking his body with his hands to resist the attacks of the kangaroos. Seeing this, Chen Mu frowned. As soon as the thought came to his mind, he doubled his body and pounced down. Roar! Accompanied by a beast's roar. The group of kangaroos were startled. Chen Mu trampled a kangaroo to death with one paw. The wings were armored, and the sharp wings swept away. The bodies of the other 5 kangaroos were split in 2 and turned into 5 corpses. Chen Mu looked around and realized that 2 tree bird people were being attacked by kangaroos. One of them even had a broken wing, his eyes were closed, and he was covered in blood. It looked like he had passed out. The other one was the one who had just been beaten, with a bruised nose and a swollen face. When Chen Mu saw this, he realized that he had made a mistake. Unless they can fly, these little guys have almost no combat effectiveness. Ancestor Green eyes filled with tears, "I'm sorry, I didn't take good care of my sisters." When Chen Mu heard this, he glanced at Lu Yi, looked away, and looked at the unconscious little guy and the little guy with a bruised nose and swollen face. He used ability sharing and shared extremely fast self-healing. The two little guys were glowing with golden light. The mutilated body of the unconscious tree bird man healed at a speed visible to the naked eye under the golden shroud. It slowly opened its eyes, stood up, and looked at Chen Mu. The body of the little guy with a bruised nose and swollen face also began to heal quickly. The tree birds and people nearby looked at this scene, all showing surprise. Chen Mu flapped his wings, flew up, and said, "Come back with me." Upon hearing this, the tree bird people carried the wooden buckets and followed Chen Mu back one after another. Chen Mu realized a problem. These little guys had no fighting power at all. Chen Mu had known about the existence of these kangaroos for a long time, but in Chen Mu's view, these kangaroos were the fifth scum of the war. There is no need to care at all. But Chen Mu never thought that these little guys would be beaten by these weaklings. However, that's true. These little guys are a combination of albatross, banyan trees, and human genes. The albatross can't be the opponent of the kangaroo, and the banyan tree itself has no fighting power, and the human genes are the genes of a weak girl. You know, this kangaroo can fight a strong adult man alone. Not to mention a group of kangaroos like this. Kangaroos usually live in groups in the wild, and they have a hot temper and beat people when they see them. Of course, this is just a small problem among the many problems Chen Mu has encountered so far. Chen Mu took those little guys back, and then shared his ability with them, sharing the ability of resurrection of all things. He looked at these little guys. When Chen Mu shared his ability with other creatures would feel it. At this glance, Chen Mu saw that the little guys were looking curious and puzzled. Chen Mu's eyes fell on Levi, and Levi was also a little curious. Chen Mu said, "Can you feel it? That ability?" Green was stunned, and it looked at Chen Mu. Chen Mu said, "This ability will be your weapon. I'll show you." As he spoke, a vine grew out beside him, and suddenly swept towards a tree as thick as a bowl in the distance. The vine bound the tree, suddenly contracted, and pulled. The trunk of the tree as thick as a bowl was broken in half. The other tree birdmen were stunned when they saw this. Chen Mu looked at them and said, "Now you can continue to collect fresh water. If you encounter an enemy, use this ability." After leaving this sentence, Chen Mu retracted his sight and walked back to where he was before, turning into a banyan tree and staying there directly. The tree birdmen flapped their wings, carried wooden buckets, and continued to work. Chen Mu looked at these little guys who flew away, thinking to himself, in this way, the kangaroos on the island can only become real scum, and they can also collect fresh water with peace of mind. Just as Chen Mu expected, there were no more kangaroos or baby kangaroos. This comfortable life lasted for 2 months. Chen Mu's body size was larger than all the trees on the island. He looked like a crane standing out among chickens. The treetops were so large that they covered all the trees in the west. The forests around him were now like grass around Chen Mu. A sailboat was stopping near the island where Chen Mu was. On the sailboat, a young man in a hat was sitting next to the sailboat fishing. Next to him was another man in a vest, also fishing. The man in the vest stood up and said, "Help me watch." Then he walked to the side. When the man in the hat heard this, he looked at the man in the vest and saw that he was standing by the boat, ready to go. Seeing this, the man in the hat curled his li become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 162. Under the bright full moon. On that island, A towering giant banyan tree appeared in front of the man in the vest and the man in the hat. The giant banyan tree was so huge that it stood like a monster. The two young men looked at each other. The man in the vest said, "Go and take a look." The hat man nodded. The man in the hat drives the sailboat. The sailboat quickly approached the island with giant trees. At this time, under the gaze of the two people, the giant tree turned into golden light and suddenly disappeared. Seeing the giant tree disappear, the two looked at each other with confusion in each other's eyes. They suspected that they were seeing an illusion, but through the doubtful eyes of their companions, they realized that it was not an illusion. Because hallucinations cannot occur to two people at the same time. "Let's go take a look," said the hat man. The man in the vest nodded. On the island. Chen Mu tried again. He was the griffin, flapping its wings and flying to another location. He wanted to become a banyan tree, but even if Chen Mu wanted to become a banyan tree, he couldn't. The system will give a warm reminder at the right time. Warm reminder, your body cannot leave the place where it is rooted. Chen Mu had heard this voice before. In the past 2 months, all the fresh water saved in the rivers and lakes on the island has been sent over by the tree bird people and absorbed by Chen Mu. Now if the tree bird people want to collect fresh water, they need to fly to other islands to collect it. Otherwise, you have to wait for it to rain. This took too long, so Chen Mu originally wanted to move his body and take root elsewhere. When he changed his position for the first time, Chen Mu was confused. The system had previously answered Chen Mu that changing from a banyan tree to a human would not have any impact. The system did not lie to Chen Mu on this point. After Chen Mu turned into an animal, he could indeed fly as long as he wanted without any impact, but the system did not tell Chen Mu that his body could only stay where he was. This is really the fallen leaves returning to their roots. Hearing the sound of the system again, Chen Mu was helpless. He could only answer where he was and take root again. However, it is no wonder that this is the case. If Chen Mu could be allowed to move his position at will, Chen Mu would go directly to the Yellow River and the Yangtze River, switch places, and devour it. It would probably not take half a month for him to save enough energy for his next progress. Chen Mu had known that the system would not allow him to evolve so easily. "But I can't help but feel a little disappointed." Ancestor, a voice came. Hearing this voice, Chen Mu looked at the tree bird man who was speaking. "It's green, what's wrong?" Liu Yi said, "There is a human ship parked next to the island." Hearing this, Chen Mu said, "Human? Bring it here. I just have something to ask." 2 months have passed, and Chen Mu, the ancestral dragon of the dragon clan, still needs to be concerned. Although Chen Mu was busy gaining evolutionary energy, he still had to pay some attention. When Liu Yi heard it, it hummed, "Yes." Other side. The man in the hat and the man in the vest have entered the island. The two of them were careful. Suddenly, the man in the vest seemed to have seen something, and his eyes suddenly lit up. "Lincoln, look!" The man in the vest pulled the hat man next to him excitedly. When Lincoln, who was called the man in the hat, heard this, he looked in the direction the man in the vest was looking. It can be seen through the trees. A girl with white wings stood beside a deep well holding a small wooden bucket filled with water. This girl has long dark green hair, a small and flawless face, and white wings mixed with green leaves behind her. She looks holy and spotless. Lincoln's eyes lit up when he saw it. "This is so beautiful. Is this the legendary elf?" The man in the vest also looked at it in a daze. He nodded repeatedly, "This is the only possibility." Tisk tisk tisk, first it was the giant ant, then it was the dragon in Eastern mythology, and now it is the tree elves in Western mythology. The man in the vest said, "Legend has it that elves are a group of beauties. Now that I see it, it is true." Lincoln looked almost directly at the girl in front of him. The girl seemed to feel something and subconsciously turned her face to look over. Those watery green eyes had a hint of luster. His eyes met Lincoln's. When Lincoln saw it, he suddenly showed a smile that he thought was handsome, raised his hand and waved to the girl, saying, "Hello." The girl was slightly startled, and there was a hint of doubt on her beautiful little face. At this time, another tree elf flew out of the well. The tree elf carried a wooden bucket full of water and flew in the air. He looked at the girl below and said, "I've filled it here too. Go back." When the tree elf named Wei heard this, she came back to her senses, withdrew her gaze, flapped her wings, and flew away with the tree elf. Lincoln was stunned and hurriedly chased after him. Hey! However, the two tree elves ignored him and flew away. Lincoln looked at the two tree elves flying away and couldn't recover for a moment. "It's another tree elf." The man in the vest came over and said with a smile, "It's so beautiful." The myth is indeed true. The Eastern dragon is very ferocious, while the elf is very cute. He watched the tree elf disappear. He looked at Lincoln beside him. Looking at Lincoln in a daze, he was slightly startled. Hey! Lincoln came back to his senses and looked at the man in the vest beside him. The man in the vest chuckled, "It seems that this tree elf has taken your soul away." Lincoln calmed down and said, "Just now, the tree elf looked at me. I can be sure that she is the one I am looking for." Ans was stunned. "No way, are you serious?" Just then, there was a movement next to them. Lincoln and Ans looked up. "I saw a tree elf flying in the air, staring at the two with her green eyes." The tree elf said, "The ancestor wants to see you too, can you come with me?" Lincoln and Ans looked at each other. Lincoln took a step forward and said, "The ancestor, is it your clan leader?" When Levi heard this, she looked at this person strangely. "The ancestor is the existence that created us. If we talk about the clan leader, the ancestor is more noble than the clan leader." Lincoln and Ans looked at each other. Lincoln looked at Levi and nodded, "It's just right. I have something to ask him. Please lead the way." Levi was a little surprised. These two guys actually agreed to it so easily. It's too strange. But Chenmu asked it to take people over, so let it go. Levi slowly landed on the ground. Because it was flying at a low altitude, the large wings were not suitable. He led the two people to Chenmu's direction. Lincoln looked at Levi's back and said, "What's your name?" Levi said, "Levi." Lincoln hummed, "Do you know the tree elf named Wei?" Levi was a little puzzled. It subconsciously looked back at this guy. "Tree elf, what is it?" Lincoln was stunned. He looked at Ens beside him. Lincoln touched the back of his head awkwardly, looked at Levi, and said, "Sorry, what should we call you?" Levi retracted his gaze and did not look at Lincoln. "We are us. My name is Levi." Lincoln was stunned. He and his companion looked at each other, both of them a little confused. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wu Nian. Chapter 163. It's night now. Today is the full moon, and the little guys are flying around under the moonlight. The pit used to store fresh water has been widened by Chen Mu. Now it can no longer be regarded as a pit, but must be regarded as a lake. At present, the number of Chen Mu's group of little guys has reached 100,000. Every night, they go out in search of fresh water. As for their methods of finding fresh water, some directly look for lakes and rivers. When the water in lakes and rivers is gone, they will dig wells and look for underground water sources. There is little fresh water on the island now. Even if the fresh water obtained by digging wells is not enough for Chen Mu to use. Most of the little ones fly to nearby islands in search of fresh water. At night, you can see these little guys flying around carrying barrels. Chen Mu was watching the little guys gliding in mid-air, carrying wooden barrels. Suddenly, there was a different movement. He subconsciously looked in the direction of the movement. Over there, the green with folded wings was leading two humans towards the side. One is wearing a hat and the other is wearing a white vest. The two of them were looking around, their eyes subconsciously falling on Chen Mu. After looking at it, they looked around again, seemingly looking for something. Liu Yi walked up to Chen Mu. She raised her head and looked at the tall Chen Mu and said, "Ancestor, people brought them, it's them." Lincoln and Anne saw Liu Yi's expression. They looked at Chen Mu together, their faces full of confusion. Because in their field of vision, they saw a giant banyan tree in front of them. It had no eyes, ears, or mouth, and no animal organs could be seen. Could such a thing be their ancestor? Ans lowered his voice and said, "Is it the tree of life?" Lincoln was startled and looked at Ans. Ans said, "The tree elves were born from the tree of life at the beginning. The tree of life is the mother of the tree elves? It exists like that. Could it be the ancestor mentioned by these tree elves? Like the origin of elves, it is said that after the great god Odin killed the giant Ymir, the elves were born from the giants, absorbed the giant's essence, and became spiritual elves? The giant's body has two sides, one side facing the sun belongs to light, and the other side leaning against the ground belongs to darkness. Elves born from light are called elves or light elves. They are holy, kind, enthusiastic and cheerful, and are regarded as friends by the gods. Those born close to darkness are dark elves, who have dark skin and silver hair is a symbol of evil. Of course, there are other stories in mythology. In many places, elves are believed to be fallen angels. Some people believe that after the death of pagans, they lacked good deeds to go to heaven, and bad deeds were not enough to send them to hell, so their souls became elves. In modern times, one version of the myth is generally accepted as another. In European legends, elves are born from the tree of life, and they can evolve into angels through some rituals. Compared with humans, elves are taller, have delicate and white skin, are good at bows and arrows, and respect women, while there are fewer men in the elves. Ens regarded Chen Mu as the tree of life. Lincoln was stunned for a moment, and he subconsciously looked at Chen Mu. Chen Mu said, "I want to ask you something." After hearing Chen Mu's voice, Lincoln and Ans were both stunned. Ans came to his senses first. He looked at Lincoln and said, "It's really the tree of life." Lincoln also nodded. Chen Mu directly stated the purpose of calling them here. Didn't the dragon clan follow humans to conquer giant ants before? How is the situation now? Lincoln and Ans looked at each other. Lincoln adjusted his emotions, took a deep breath, took a step, looked at Chen Mu, and said, "Dear Lord Tree of Life, before I answer your question, can you promise me one thing?" Tree of Life? Oh. Have I become the Tree of Life again? These guys always like to preconceptionally identify themselves as something. Chen Mu didn't bother to explain. He was a little curious about what this guy wanted. "What's the matter?" Chen Mu said. Lincoln said, "I want to meet the elf named Wei. Elf? The elves are here too? So, I also created an elven clan?" Chen Mu was speechless. Just, wait a minute. Why does this guy want to see Wei? Chen Mu was a little confused. He looked at the greenery beside him and said, "Call Wei over." Chen Mu had no need to agree, but Chen Mu was a little curious about what this two-legged ape wanted to do. When Liu Yi heard this, she nodded slightly, flapped her wings, flew into the sky, and disappeared. Chen Mu looked at the two humans below. He didn't say anything, just stared at them. Of course, it's unclear whether they could know they were being watched. Chen Mu is not in a hurry, he has plenty of time. Chen Mu is now almost in a state of immortality. Observing interesting things is one of his pleasures. Time passed by minute by minute. Soon, Liu Yi and Wei appeared in mid-air. The two of them flapped their wings and slowly fell from the sky. Chen Mu noticed that the two humans were staring directly at Lu Yi and Wei Wei. Especially the human who said he wanted to call her Wei Wei stared at Wei Wei with eyes wide open. Chen Mu, who was once a human, naturally knew what his eyes meant. Chen Mu was a little unhappy. Although Chen Mu didn't intend to interfere with the affairs of these little guys, it didn't feel good when he thought about the creatures he created being targeted by others. After Wei Wei fell, she subconsciously looked at the two humans standing next to her with her green eyes. Her eyes were a little confused. She looked away and raised her head to look at Chen Mu. "Ancestor," she said softly, "say hello to Chen Mu." Chen Mu hummed. Chen Mu looked at the guy named Lincoln and said, "Then, you have also seen Wei Wei now. What's next?" Lincoln saluted Chen Mu, lowered his head and said, "Master Tree of Life, I want to ask you to marry Wei Wei to me." Chen Mu was a little impatient, but of course no one could tell from his appearance. Lincoln continued, "Since the first time I saw Wei Wei, I couldn't help myself. I feel like she is an angel sent to me by God. Please, just marry Wei Wei to me, even if you let me die also willing." Chen Mu really didn't expect that someone would be so brave. This reminded Chen Mu of something. "How dare you?" Chen Mu felt disgusted. "It's like eating a dead fly." Chen Mu adjusted his impatience and nausea. "That's it," Chen Mu said, "since you are willing to pay the price with your life, then I will give you a chance." Lin Quan raised his face and looked at Chen Mu, his eyes shining slightly. Chen Mu said, "Relationships are between two people, not wishful thinking. Since you are willing to pay the price of your life, do you dare to gamble with your life? Let Wei Wei make the choice. If she is willing, I will Chen Quan; if she doesn't want to, then you have to die." Lincoln was stunned for a moment, then he gritted his teeth and said, "Okay." Chen Mu looked at Wei Wei beside him and said slowly, "Wei Wei, did you hear that? You have two choices now, one is to marry him, the other is to kill him, you choose." Lincoln's heart moved, and he looked at Wei Wei subconsciously. Wei Wei looked at Lincoln. Wei Wei used resurrection of all things, and the long vine behind her suddenly stretched and swept towards Lincoln. Lincoln's body was wrapped around him and he shrank suddenly, accompanied by the sound of flesh and blood being separated. Lincoln's body was twisted into several sections, with flesh and blood flying everywhere. Next to him, Ans was stunned for a moment, his body slumped on the ground, his mouth opened wide, and he stared blankly at the scene. His face was pale, and his eyes were full of fear. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 164. For Wei Wei, there is only one choice between these two choices. Because she has no intention of getting married, she only knows that Lincoln and Ans are completely different creatures from her. For Wei Wei, different creatures are either neutral animals that have nothing to do with her, or they can harm herself. Evil animals. The reason why Wei Wei looked at Lincoln and Ans more before was because she had never encountered these two creatures before, so she was confused and curious. On the way, Wei Wei also learned about the situation through Lu Yi. The ancestor asked them questions, but they made demands of the ancestor. For Wei Wei, they just didn't respect the ancestor. Obviously, this kind of creature is definitely not a good creature. When Chen Mu asked Wei Wei to choose to marry this strange creature or kill them, naturally, she would not consider marrying her because the only other option was to kill. Chen Mu looked at Lincoln, who had turned into a corpse. This was completely within Chen Mu's expectation. Chen Mu looked at Ens, "So, can you answer my question?" Ens's face turned pale. He looked at the blood. He looked at the giant demon-like banyan tree in front of him. He swallowed, "But, it's okay. Half a month ago, most of the giant ants were eliminated, and those dragons left the mainland and returned to the deep sea." Ens' voice was a little loud and nervous. "That's all I know. From what I saw on the news, I don't know anything else. Don't kill me, Ans shouted in panic. Is that all you know? Also, ordinary people definitely don't know much. However, there is no need to worry too much. If something happens, those little guys will not let their companions be bullied by humans. It's probably already started. This much is enough. Enz's terrified cries were heard. Next, a question was placed in front of Chen Mu. This guy, do you want to stay? Let him go back. I feel that if I let him go, my position will definitely be exposed. With human greed, there will definitely be trouble. Chen Mu is not afraid of trouble. In the current situation, even with human technology, it is still difficult to destroy him who can heal himself very quickly, but he can destroy human beings at will. But Chen Mu doesn't like trouble. Just like a male lion can kill a honey badger at will, but when the honey badger takes the initiative to cause trouble for the male lion will still feel annoyed. Never mind. Countless pebbles flew up and, under Chen Mu's control, turned into a palm made of huge pebbles. He stretched out his hand and held Ens. No, Ens tried to struggle. However, Shiza's palm suddenly clenched, and there was a click. Blood spat out from Enz's mouth, and there was no movement. Another group of pebbles formed a hand, digging a deep hole in the ground. En's body was thrown into the pit, and Lincoln was swept into the pit by vines growing from the ground. The two stone palms disintegrated and filled the deep pit. Cover with soil. Roots of grass and flowers grew out of the soil. After a while, the place became exactly the same as the surrounding areas, without any difference. Chen Mu looked at Lu Yi and Wei Wei beside him and said, "You can continue to get water." "Okay," Lu Yi responded. The two little guys flapped their wings and continued their business. Seeing this scene, Chen Mu slowly expanded his consciousness. His eyes fell on the seaside, and there was a sailboat on the seaside. It was those two human sailing ships. As soon as the control ability was used, the sailboat disappeared into thin air. In fact, it was not that they disappeared, but that Chen Mu used his control ability to control the two sailboats, and then directly dismembered the sailboats into atoms. Chen Mu was about to withdraw his vision when suddenly he noticed a few trees standing there. The moment he saw those trees, Chen Mu's attention was completely attracted. This is. Green trees grow along the coast. Weird. Chen Mu was a little confused. What kind of tree is this? It grows directly in the sea water? Will it not die? Chen Mu looked at it carefully. Sure enough, 1/3 of these trees were submerged in the sea water, and their roots were all soaked in the sea water. However, they grew very normally, and there was no sign of withering at all. This is completely out of Chen Mu's common sense. Most plants will basically die if someone accidentally pours sea water on them. However, these trees are not only not afraid of sea water, but also grow directly on the coast, allowing their roots to be soaked in sea water. This is just weird. You know, most trees cannot be soaked in water all the time, otherwise they will rot. And these trees are not only not afraid of the alkalinity of sea water, but they are also not afraid of rot. It's so strange. Chen Mu observed them carefully as if he had discovered a new continent. The names of these trees are mangroves. Mangrove is a plant that grows in tropical marine areas. This kind of plant grows on the seaside. Their bark and leaves have a unique breathing method. Their crowns usually grow above the seawater. Even if the seawater rises and engulfs them, they will not die in a short period of time. The cells in the mangrove body can filter seawater, turn seawater into edible fresh water, and then directly discharge excess salt from the body through metabolism. This is the reason why mangroves can grow directly in seawater. The mangrove itself is a natural desalination device. Of course, Chen Mu didn't know about this thing. However, the gene of this plant made Chen Mu a little excited. Since it can stand in the seawater without dying, it means that it directly absorbs seawater to survive, which means Chen Mu was immediately happy. Gene editing. The target has been locked, you. Without waiting for the system to finish, Chen Mu interrupted directly. Chen Mu said, I want it to absorb seawater to provide itself with water genes. Editing without needing Chen Mu to say anything, the system started editing genes after listening. This is also the convenience of this ability. After a while, a golden bead appeared in front of Chen Mu's body as a towering tree. And the mangrove turned into a little golden light and disappeared. With the help of the control ability, the golden bead approached Chen Mu. Gluttony evolution. The golden bead was swallowed by Chen Mu. At the moment of swallowing, Chen Mu's body was wrapped in golden light. His huge body also changed. The elves in the distance raised their heads and looked in the direction of Chen Mu. Chen Mu's body was so huge that almost all the elves on the island could see it. Looking at Chen Mu wrapped in golden light, the elves had a hint of doubt in their eyes. They didn't know what happened to Chen Mu. The golden light slowly dissipated. Chen Mu's figure had changed slightly, and his body was a little taller than before. It was obvious that Chen Mu had obtained the genes of the mangrove. The combination of mangrove and banyan tree was naturally a little different. It's comfortable, so next, let's start. I want to grow to the sky. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 165. Chen Mu was planning to use his swallowing ability. But Chen Mu suddenly realized something, he couldn't use his devouring ability. Because Chen Mu subconsciously looked at the moon in the sky with his conscious vision. Because it is night, without the participation of sunlight, Chen Mu, as a plant, cannot use photosynthesis. For plants to eat, photosynthesis is indispensable. Chen Mu slowly suppressed the boiling emotions in his heart and waited quietly, waiting for the morning to arrive. As time passed, a ray of sunshine penetrated the clouds from the east, and the morning sunshine fell on Chen Mu. Chen Mu felt the sunshine and reopened his consciousness. Chen Mu saw the little guys rushing back. These little guys are flying in the mid-air, flapping their pure white wings and holding small wooden buckets. They are working very hard, just like the little bees helping the queen bee collect honey. Elf, Chen Mu thought of what the two humans said. Indeed, it looks like one elf after another. These little guys flew over, and then, as usual, they gathered around Chen Mu, ready to rest. Look at them. Chen Mu originally planned to ignore them and start devouring them directly. But Chen Mu knew that if he ignored them now, he would definitely have an impact on them if he grew larger while devouring them. Think of this. Branches sprouted on both sides of Chen Mu's trunk. A thick trunk appeared, and was quickly wrapped by tough branches. There are more and more branches, slowly intertwining. Chen Mu used tough branches as muscles, thick trunks as bones, and bark as skin to create a pair of huge arms. Chen Mu raised his hands and shook hands. Not flexible, but functional. The elves below saw the movement here and looked here. Notice what they do. Chen Mu slowly stretched out his hands and placed them among the elves. The elves were still a little confused. Chen Mu said, "Everything is on the palm of your hand." The elves looked at each other with doubts in their eyes. But they didn't think much about Chen Mu's order. They flapped their wings one by one and landed on Chen Mu's palm. However, the number of these elves is very, very large. In these 2 months, Chen Mu has created 100,000 elves, and there are a lot of them. Although Chen Mu's hands were very huge, he couldn't blend in with all the elves. "Ancestor, there are too many sisters to stand on," Liu Yi said aloud. Chen Mu looked at his palms and saw that his palms were full of people, and there were many elves outside. Chen Mu thought for a moment, and it seemed that he had underestimated the number of elves he had created during this period. He originally planned to hold them in his hands and then devour them. Now it seems, no. He said, You all fly to my canopy and remember to connect to my body with the aerial roots in your hair. Along with Chen Mu's voice fell. The elves didn't think much at all. They flapped their wings one by one, flew to the top of Chen Mu's tree canopy, and found a place to sit down. The vine-like aerial roots in their hair were connected to Chen Mu's body. These elves were created by Chen Mu and were connected by blood with Chen Mu. From a certain point of view, they were Chen Mu's doppelgangers. Of course, Chen Mu would never think so. The banyan tree has the largest crown of all trees. Although there are many elves, Chen Mu's size is so huge that it is enough to blend in with these elves. These elves were still a little confused and didn't know what Chen Mu wanted to do. At this time, Chen Mu started. Swallow. One of Chen Mu's tree roots is connected to the lake next to it. The fresh water in the lake turned into bits of golden light, quickly submerged into the roots of Chen Mu's tree, and entered Chen Mu's body through the roots. Chen Mu's body was growing, and while growing, one of his tree roots began to stretch crazily under Chen Mu's deliberate manipulation, heading straight towards the nearest seaside. Soon, the tree root entered the sea water. The moment it touches the sea water, the sea water also turned into golden light, passing through the tree roots and sinking into Chen Mu's body. Chen Mu continued to grow in size, somewhat slowly. But as more and more sea water was desalinated into fresh water by Chen Mu and absorbed by Chen Mu, more and more tree roots grew and entered the sea water. As more and more tree roots submerge into the sea, Chen Mu began to grow in size at a shocking speed. Chen Mu could hear the sound of the system. Congratulations on getting evolutionary energy. The current evolutionary energy progress is 1%. Congratulations on obtaining evolutionary energy. The current evolutionary energy progress is 2%. And at the same time as the sound sounded, Chen Mu's body size is also increasing crazily. From the first 300 meters, it started to get bigger. It became 400 meters high, 500 meters high, 600 meters high, 700 meters, 1000 meters, 1001, 1002. In the process of growing, his canopy becomes wider and wider. Countless aerial roots hang down from the branches and fall to the ground. When they hit the ground, they take root and become new branches, supporting the crown of the tree. After the aerial roots of the banyan tree fall to the ground, they will take root, absorb nutrients, transport water, and form new branches. It will not branch or grow leaves, but become new branches. The banyan tree is a plant that can form a forest, and their aerial roots are new small trees. In fact, if the aerial roots did not fall to the ground and become new trunks, the banyan tree with the largest crown among all trees would inevitably collapse under Chen Mu's endless growth, but these aerial roots helped Chen Mu to support his crown. Chen Mu madly absorbed fresh water from the sea, carbon dioxide from the sky, and sunlight from the sun. Those things turned into golden light and sank into Chen Mu's body under the effect of the devouring ability. He is growing wildly. Growing wildly at an extremely terrifying speed. 1,300 meters. 1,400 meters. 2,000 meters. The largest tree recorded in the world is the Australian almond eucalyptus, which is 156 meters high, and Chen Mu's current height is completely out of common sense. And he is still growing wildly. As time went by, as Chen Mu's body gradually grew bigger, the island that was so huge in Chen Mu's eyes was completely trampled under his feet. Chen Mu's trunk was already thicker than the island. Countless dense tree roots went down, deep into the seabed, directly sank into the seabed, and took root directly on the seabed. At this moment, Chen Mu's roots were already dense and extremely thick. Soon, the island was directly swallowed by Chen Mu under his crazy growth. The island disappeared. And Chen Mu's roots were directly rooted in the sea. He continued to swallow the sea water and continued to grow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 166. The elves on Chenmu's treetops looked at Chenmu's changes, their eyes full of novelty. But they were not surprised. Because they had not seen much, they knew that Chenmu could grow quickly, but this time Chenmu grew a little fast, so they were a little curious, but not surprised. However, not far away, a fishing boat was fishing, and the people on the fishing boat were looking at the giant tree that was getting bigger and bigger. One of the middle-aged men who was holding a fishing net and preparing to collect the net stared blankly at the tree that was getting bigger and bigger. His hand forgot to use force for a while, and the fishing net slipped away directly. Everyone stopped their work and looked at the huge tree. What is that? They were all a little stunned. Soon, Chenmu's body reached a height of more than 2,000 meters. His body has become extremely huge. From a distance, you can see an extremely huge tree directly inserted into the sea water, and the crown directly goes deep into the clouds. But just like before, this crazy growth is not endless. Because there is a limit to the progress of evolutionary energy. While Chenmu was madly absorbing and gaining size, the progress of evolutionary energy was also growing rapidly. Just like when Chenmu became other large animals, when the progress of evolutionary energy was about to be full, his size could not continue to increase. Sure enough, when Chenmu's size continued to grow, it grew to about 3,000 meters. A familiar voice sounded in Chenmu's ears. Acquiring evolutionary energy, the current progress of evolutionary energy is 100%. The progress of evolutionary energy is 100%, start evolution. As the voice sounded, Chenmu's body was covered by golden light in the blink of an eye. Chenmu was slightly startled. Is it over so soon? Chenmu also planned to grow directly into space. What a pity. However, it is indeed too difficult to grow into space. Only more than 100 kilometers is considered space. And the tallest tree currently recorded is only more than 100 meters. Chenmu's current height of more than 3,000 meters is already appalling. And when Chenmu grows, his body grows not only in height, but also in width, especially his crown. The banyan tree has the largest crown of all trees, and now the area covered by Chenmu's crown is several times larger than the previous island. His aerial roots have also sunk into the sea and taken root deep in the seabed. Chenmu now looks like a huge forest standing on the sea, and the crown of this huge forest is a crown with a huge mask. The area of this crown is unimaginable. The golden light is getting stronger and stronger. Chenmu suddenly thought of a question. If his body evolves and leaves, what should he do with the little guys staying in his crown? He looked over there, and Chenmu was surprised to find that those little guys also glowed with golden light like himself. They were looking at their bodies with confusion. Seeing this, Chenmu immediately understood. The aerial roots on the tops of these little guys are connected to Chenmu's body. The system directly regards them as part of itself. If it continues to evolve, these little guys will die. Wait a minute, Chenmu suddenly spoke, interrupting the evolution process. Hearing this voice, the golden light on Chenmu's body slowly dissipated. Before, Chenmu tried it. As long as Chenmu wanted, the evolution process could be paused. Feeling that the evolution was paused, Chenmu looked at the little guys intact, and he breathed a sigh of relief. These little guys, although they were like idiots, they were created by him anyway. Chenmu couldn't accept watching them die directly. But at this time, Chenmu discovered another thing. Even if the system did not assimilate those little guys as part of itself, but just turned itself into other creatures, these little guys would not have the ability to take root, and they would die. Of course, Chenmu had another way. That is to turn one of the little guys into a being like himself and provide water to the other little guys, which is also possible. After Chen Mu thought about it, he decided to try his luck first. He said, "System, can you keep me as a tree body?" "Yes. It can be estimated that it can, but the important thing is another question." Chen Mu said, "Will this affect the next evolution? You will lose the ability to change into this creature." The voice of the system came. "This doesn't have much impact. This kind of tree will just grow bigger. And, this thing seems to be unable to leave its original place, that is to say, even if it changes back to this appearance, it will probably have to return to this place, which is simply useless." Chen Mu said, "Besides this, will it affect the process of evolution?" "No other impact." The voice of the system came. It paused slightly, and then continued, "If you want to return to this template, you can come back here and take it back." "Can you take it back again?" Chen Mu was happy. "Okay," Chen Mu said, "I decided to keep this body. Start the next evolution." "Start evolution." The voice of the system came. Hearing this voice, Chen Mu's body lit up with a burst of golden light. His consciousness disappeared. The golden light separated from the body of the giant tree, turned into a golden sphere, and quickly flew into the air. This scene attracted the attention of the elves on the tree. They looked at the sphere until the golden sphere disappeared from their sight. They looked at each other with puzzled faces. They obviously didn't know what happened. At the same time, "Do you feel that the weather has been getting colder recently?" Xiaonian complained. Hearing this, Man'er Yuan, who was sitting at the table and correcting homework, nodded with empathy, "Indeed." Xiaonian pulled her coat and said, "It feels colder than usual recently. Even if the blue algae erupted and absorbed carbon dioxide, it should take time. It hasn't been long since the blue algae erupted, and it's so cold. It's really unbearable." She was in the south, which belongs to the temperate zone. Now it's autumn, but the temperature is already colder than winter. This made her a little uncomfortable. Man'er Yuan raised her hand, exhaled, and rubbed her hand. She stood up and moved a little, and she subconsciously looked in one direction. The glass door of the balcony was closed, and through the glass door, she could see a pot of plants on the balcony. "I almost forgot about you." Muttering, Manor Garden opened the door. "Bring the pot of plants into the room, put it in the corner, and then close the door." On the other side, Chen Mu's consciousness gradually recovered. After regaining consciousness, he subconsciously opened his eyes. However, he still couldn't open his eyes. It was probably some kind of plant again. Chen Mu didn't care at all. After all, he was used to it. He just wanted to know what abilities he gained after his evolution this time. However, there is no prompt now, so don't worry about it, just look around first. Thinking about it, Chen Mu opened his consciousness vision. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 167. Within the Global Alliance Military Department, Den Yu sat at his desk and watched the battle between giant dragons and giant ants being played on the devices in front of him. In fact, there is nothing interesting about this video. It is basically a one-sided massacre. The huge body of the giant dragon is much larger than those giant ants, and its defense power is amazing. In this video, it is basically a one-sided massacre. Of course, Den Yu's heart was not focused on this. What she was thinking about now was another question. 2 months ago, Den Yu was ordered to collect the blood of some giant dragons and giant ants. This is not difficult to collect. Although it was a one-sided massacre, some giant dragons would inevitably suffer some minor injuries during the battle. Humans may get cuts on their skin by leaves when walking in the woods. Although dragons are stronger than humans, they are not as strong as human beings. When giant ants fight, they will inevitably get injured and bleed. For her, getting some blood was not a problem. The problem is that Denyu doesn't know what his superiors want to do. Why take the blood of giant dragons and giant ants? Denyu was slightly uneasy. Still working, came a voice. Hearing this voice, Denyu came back to her senses and looked at her colleague Lan, who entered the office. Seeing this colleague, Denyu said, "Are you done?" Lan and Denyu are both colleagues in this global alliance and often work together. However, just 2 months ago, Lan accepted other tasks and has been away until now. Seeing Lan come back, Denyu suddenly had an idea. "What have you been busy with these 2 months? I didn't even see you." When Lan heard this, she looked at the door and then at Denyu. She leaned on the table and looked at Denyu with a smile. "We are doing research. We are studying a new weapon that can be used with a new weapon to fight against giant dragons and giant ants. After all, the fate of the Earth should be in the hands of humans. It is a bit ridiculous to hand over the orders of humans to other creatures." Denyu was slightly startled. New weapons. This terminology made Denyu immediately think of the giant dragon blood and giant ant blood that he gave them. She moved. Biological weapons. Lan was slightly startled. She was a little surprised. "How do you know?" Denyu never expected that she had guessed correctly. She frowned. "Isn't the research on biological weapons prohibited?" Lan shrugged and said, "The time is different, and the natural conditions are different. Whether to ban or not depends on the time. At the same time, as long as humans are willing, it is just a matter of saying a word to lift the ban." Denyu also understands it. She adjusted her mood slightly and looked at Lan. How are you doing now?" Lan smiled. "It's not bad. After a while, you can see the finished product. Okay, it's time for me to get busy." With that said, Lan took some things, waved to Denyu, and left. Seeing this, Denyu could only watch Lan leave. Until Ian's figure left. Denyu's thoughts began to move. The giant ants have disappeared. At this time, biological weapons research that should be banned is launched. What is the purpose? If there is a threat to humans now, it is only dragons. Denyu took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and didn't think too much. At the same time, Chenmu has also opened his consciousness. "Take a look. I saw myself in a flower pot. He is a cactus the size of a ping pong ball. It is indeed a plant. There's just something wrong." Pot. Chenmu looked at the flower pot where he was. Normal cactus obviously does not have a flower pot. If there is a flower pot, it means that this is a plant cultivated by humans. Has consciousness evolved? In other words, Chenmu directly transferred his consciousness to this plant. Chenmu had experienced this experience several times before. It's possible that sometimes, his consciousness enters other living beings, but he doesn't know it. As usual, Chenmu chose to open his consciousness as usual and looked around. Looking around, Chenmu found that it was in a bedroom. The bedroom is very simple, with a table and chairs, a bed, and a wardrobe. Neatly organized. And sitting in front of the table was a woman, holding a pen in her hand and writing in a notebook. Beside the bed, there was a girl, lying on the bed, covered with a thick quilt, holding a mobile phone in her hand, looking at the screen, trying to figure out what short video to watch. The girl frowned, subconsciously looked at the woman who was reviewing her homework, and said, Yuan. As soon as she finished speaking, she was distracted for a moment and the phone in her hand slipped from her hand. Slap it directly on her face. "Ah," she exclaimed. Manor Garden didn't even look back and said calmly, "Don't scream, it's very noisy." "Oh." Xiaonian rubbed his face. Chenmu had no interest in them. A golden light appeared all over his body. After knowing your general environment, he planned to turn into another creature and leave here. But at this time, a voice sounded. "You think, if the cyanobacteria continue to explode, will something happen to the Earth?" Xiaonian asked aloud, I saw people on the internet saying that if the temperature continues to drop, it may lead to an ice age. Cyanobacteria. Ice age. Chen Mu temporarily stopped changing. What these two guys were discussing were the mutated cyanobacteria they had created. But what does the mutant blue algae have to do with the so-called ice age? Chen Mu was still a little curious about this question that concerned him. Zhuang Yuan said, who knows? When carbon dioxide decreases, the temperature will indeed drop. As for how low it will drop, I don't know. Even if an ice age really comes, it won't be surprising. She continued to work. Hearing this, Chen Mu understood it. The mutant blue algae absorbs carbon dioxide, and when carbon dioxide decreases, the temperature will drop sharply. In fact, what Chen Mu didn't know was that in ancient times, the Earth had experienced a terrifying global cooling due to the explosive reproduction of blue algae and the increase in oxygen. It's time to go. Chen Mu's body turned into golden light. The light turned into a griffin. The light attracted the attention of the other two girls in the bedroom. Zhuang Yuan and Xiaonian looked at Chen Mu in a daze. After Chen Mu turned into a griffin, he looked at the flower pot beside him. The cactus in the flower pot had disappeared. According to the system's nature, it is estimated that as a cactus, it is probably impossible for me to leave the soil of this flower pot. The flower pot must be taken with me. Chen Mu held the flower pot in his mouth and looked at the window next to him. The window disappeared out of thin air and turned into a little silver light. Chen Mu jumped to the window under the gaze of Man'er Yuan and Xiaonian, jumped, flapped his wings, and flew away directly. Man'er Yuan and Xiaonian stared at the scene in front of them blankly, and they didn't come back to their senses for a while. What's going on? Xiaonian was a little confused. At this moment, a gust of wind blew from the window. A little bit of snowflakes blew into the bedroom with the wind. Snow. Xiaonian's expression was a little more unbelievable. She hurriedly got up and walked to the window. Looking at the dark clouds in the sky and the snowflakes floating all over the sky, her mouth opened slightly, and she was a little stunned for a while. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 168. How is it possible? Xiaonian was stunned. Snowfall in the south. Where she was, it was the kind of area where snow might not be seen for decades. For Xiaonian, winter was just a matter of wearing more clothes. But now it's snowing even before winter. Xiaonian couldn't understand the scene in front of her. Of course, Xiaonian couldn't understand the scene just now. The creature that left with the flower pot in its mouth. Chen Mu was flying in the air, feeling the oncoming wind and cold snowflakes. He looked around. Everything in front of him turned white, and the ground was covered with snow. Snowfall, this phenomenon Chen Mu had experienced before. When he turned into an emperor penguin, he also experienced a blizzard. However, Chen Mu's current body is a griffin. Compared with the emperor penguin with thick fat, the griffin does not have such a strong ability to resist cold. Chen Mu felt cold. Of course, it was just a little cold, which was still within Chen Mu's tolerance range. We have to go to the beach. As long as we go to the beach, we can integrate the genes of mangroves into this cactus, so that we can usher in the next evolution. At this moment, a voice sounded in Chen Mu's ears. Congratulations on your successful evolution, and get the evolution reward of instant adaptation. Congratulations on your successful evolution, and get the evolution reward of phenomenon control. These two things are abilities that Chen Mu has never heard of. What does this mean? System, what are these two abilities? Chen Mu didn't quite understand. The system said in a voice without any emotion, instant adaptation ability can make your body instantly adapt to all extreme environments around you. Huh, Chen Mu was slightly startled. Chen Mu felt it carefully, and suddenly, he found that it was exactly as the system said. Chen Mu was clearly flying in the air, enjoying the strong wind and snowflakes coming towards him. But at this moment, Chen Mu didn't feel the cold at all as he did at the beginning. Facing the howling wind and snow, Chen Mu didn't feel cold at all. This is probably the ability of instant adaptation. What about phenomenon control? Chen Mu asked. Phenomenon control allows you to control some physical phenomena you are currently seeing. The system's voice sounded slowly. Chen Mu was slightly startled. Physical phenomenon? This answer made Chen Mu a little confused. Chen Mu raised his head and looked at the snowflakes in front of him. Is snowing a physical phenomenon? Chen Mu thought. Try it. Chen Mu's thoughts came together. Within 1,000 meters around Chen Mu, all the snowflakes broke away from the control of gravity and gathered towards Chen Mu frantically. The snowflakes gathered frantically in front of Chen Mu. In the blink of an eye, the snowflakes condensed into a giant snowball. The snowball was suspended in the air. Looking at the huge snowball in front of him. Snowing is indeed a physical phenomenon, that is to say, as long as it is a physical phenomenon, I can operate and control it. Chen Mu released the control, and the huge snowball like a hill fell down. The snowball fell and directly swallowed up the houses below. Chen Mu flapped his wings and flew away with the flower pot in his mouth. There is something called natural phenomenon, and natural phenomenon includes three kinds of phenomena: physical phenomenon, chemical phenomenon, and life phenomenon. Snow is a physical change of water, which is a physical phenomenon. Chen Mu flapped his wings and flew in one direction. Chen Mu didn't recognize this place. His consciousness and vision expanded to the limit. He saw land and lakes, but he couldn't see where the sea was for the time being. Chen Mu was not in a hurry. As long as he flew in one direction, he would naturally see the sea. Chen Mu flew in one direction until night. Feeling a little tired, Chen Mu slowly landed on the roof of a building, lay down, held the flower pot in his arms, closed his eyes and began to rest. The next morning, Chen Mu was awakened by the noise. Look, does my pile look like you? No, I'm not that round. Look at this. Does this look like you? Nonsense, I'm not oval. You are originally oval, haha. Listening to the noise below, Chen Mu slowly opened his eyes, and it was pitch black. It seemed that something was covering him. Chen Mu raised his head, and the snow piled on his head fell down. Chen Mu looked around and found that he was covered by snowflakes. He raised his head and found that it was still snowing, of course, less than yesterday. Who woke him up? Chen Mu looked down and found that there were a few little kids in thick clothes making snowmen on the snow below. However, the snowmen were strangely piled up, and it looked like they were made of a few mini snowballs. Chen Mu raised his head and looked at the sky. Was the snow still falling? It seems that this place should not be near the tropics. In the tropics or places close to the tropics, there are only rainy seasons and dry seasons in a year, just like Africa. Snowing basically does not happen. It's incredible that it's snowing in the south. A voice came. Hearing this voice, Chen Mu looked down. A middle-aged man with short hair was standing in front of the door, looking at the white snowflakes on the ground. I have lived a lifetime, and I only saw snow once a few decades ago. There are so many strange things this year. Hearing this, Chen Mu's heart moved. Nandong. Chen Mu knew this place. Nandong province is located in the south of Asia, close to the subtropics. Chen Mu had heard of this place before. It did snow a few decades ago, but it was not heavy. It has not snowed for a very long time since then. Chen Mu was a little incredible. He thought of the conversation between the two little girls he heard before. Could it be that the blue algae multiplied wildly, causing the temperature to drop sharply, and even the subtropics were affected? Chen Mu looked at the snowflakes that were still falling in the distance. Ice Age. Will it come? Chen Mu shook his head. Even if it came, it would not affect him. Never mind. Chenmu looked at the snowflakes on his body, and with a thought, those snowflakes were moved away by Chenmu using phenomenon control, revealing the flower pot. He picked up the flower pot again and was about to leave. Suddenly, Chenmu felt wet. Wet. Chenmu looked at himself and saw fresh water left by the melting snow. Seeing this fresh water. Fresh water? Chenmu's heart moved. Oh, I am now planning to find fresh water for plants, and isn't this snow fresh water? Is it possible? As soon as Chenmu thought of it, the snow on the roof condensed in front of Chenmu and turned into a snowball under his control. The snowball changed quickly and turned into a water ball. The water ball stood in the air and was suspended in the air. Chenmu's eyes trembled slightly. It really works. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 169. Snow is just water that has evaporated. After turning into clouds, it is affected by low temperatures and condenses into small ice crystals. The ice crystals fall down, and they are white. In people's eyes, they have another name, snow. In fact, snow and water are just caused by some physical phenomena. Snow is a physical phenomenon of water, which is within Chenmu's control. Chenmu can easily convert the snow into fresh water. And this fresh water is exactly what Chenmu needs now. Chenmu picked up the flower pot, flapped his wings and flew up. The movement on the roof attracted the attention of the people below, and those people raised their heads and looked at Chenmu one by one. "Daddy, look!" The little guys who were making snowmen hurried to the middle-aged man, and one of the little girls pointed at Chenmu. The middle-aged man looked up and looked at Chenmu flying in the air and flying away. His mouth opened slightly, and his expression was a little surprised and unbelievable. Chenmu flew out of the city and happened to find a river. "See this river?" Chenmu flew over and landed by the river. He placed the flower pot by the river. His huge griffin body glowed with golden light, and his body entered the flower pot and turned back into the small cactus before. Chenmu looked at the river next to him. Phenomenon control. Uncontrollable, the system's voice sounded. Chenmu was slightly startled, and before Chenmu could ask a question, the system's voice continued to sound. Phenomenon control can control existences with a smaller mass than you. If the mass is larger than you, it cannot be used. Sure enough, just like many abilities, there are restrictions on mass or size. Chenmu wanted to control this river, and the water in this river was connected together, so the mass was equal to the mass of this river. Chenmu's small cactus could not be compared in mass. But it didn't matter. Chenmu looked around. Under the flower pot was a piece of ground covered with snow, and snowflakes were still falling from the sky. The snowflakes turned into fresh water droplets little by little and sank into Chenmu's flower pot. Swallow. Chenmu used the swallowing ability. The fresh water turned into dots of light and was swallowed and absorbed by Chenmu. The carbon dioxide and sunlight in the air followed the fresh water into Chenmu's body and also sank into it. The cactus is different from ordinary plants, and it is completely different from the banyan tree that Chenmu had transformed into before. Common plants, like the banyan tree, use the chloroplasts contained in the leaves to photosynthesize and provide nutrients to the plants. But the cactus has no leaves. It can be said that the leaves of the cactus have degenerated into thorns, and the thorns have no leaves, so naturally there are no chloroplasts. The body of the cactus we see is actually its stem. In the words of the banyan tree, the round body of the cactus can also be regarded as its trunk. The stem and the trunk are actually the same concept. But the stem of the cactus is different. It has chloroplasts in its stem. That's right, the chloroplasts of the cactus are located in its stem. The cactus uses the chloroplasts in its stem to photosynthesize to obtain energy. Through photosynthesis, Chen Mu absorbed carbon dioxide in the air and fresh water from the snow. There was a lot of snow, both on the ground and floating in the sky. Chen Mu's body began to grow slowly. Maybe because Chen Mu's initial size was too small, his growth rate was much slower than that of the banyan tree. Soon, the space in the flower pot was filled with Chen Mu. Chen Mu obtained evolutionary energy by swallowing, while observing the surroundings through his consciousness. As time passed, the light gradually dimmed. Soon, it was completely dark. It was already night. But what surprised Chen Mu was that even at night, his body continued to absorb carbon dioxide. Why? When many merchants sell cacti, they will introduce these creatures to some buyers who intend to buy flowers, saying that they will release oxygen at night and are praised as natural oxygen bars. It's the same for cacti. They used to grow in some tropical places. The temperature was too high during the day and they consumed too much water, so they had a very special way of survival. During the day, they would choose to close the stomata used to absorb carbon dioxide and choose not to absorb carbon dioxide to reduce the water consumed during the day. At night, they would open their stomata, absorb carbon dioxide, and then fix the carbon dioxide in their own vacuoles. When it was daytime, they would photosynthesize and synthesize the energy they needed, and generate oxygen at the same time. During the day, in order to reduce water evaporation, the stomata were closed. The oxygen generated by photosynthesis naturally could not be discharged. So the oxygen accumulated in the body would be released while absorbing carbon dioxide at night. Of course, the amount was not much and could not change much air, so just listen to the merchant's words. Originally, under normal circumstances, Chen Mu, as a cactus, could not absorb carbon dioxide during the day, but Chen Mu used the devouring energy to forcefully absorb it. At night, Chen Mu felt that he was absorbing carbon dioxide, which was naturally caused by the unique living habits of the cactus. Chen Mu didn't understand. You know, when he was the banyan tree, at night, basically all activities stopped and the only thing left was rest. But, since it can be absorbed, then continue to absorb it. Absorbing carbon dioxide earlier now can also grow faster tomorrow morning. The next day, Chen Mu's roots have touched the flower pot. This is not a good thing. If the roots are restricted by the flower pot, there is no way to enter the ground. So, Chen Mu thought about it and the flower pot cracked. Chen Mu's roots sank into the soil on the river bank. The soil absorbed the fresh water in the river, and this fresh water now directly entered Chen Mu's body along the roots of Chen Mu's cactus. Chen Mu used his devouring ability and used the revival of all things at the same time. The roots of the cactus quickly grew larger, and then passed through the soil and sank into the river. When the roots touched the river, Chen Mu no longer had to deliberately slow down his speed. He began to grow wildly. A cactus grew wildly at a speed visible to the naked eye. From the size of a ping-pong ball at the beginning, it became the size of a fist, and from the size of a fist to the size of a football. From the size of a football, it continued to grow larger. The entire giant cactus ball glowed with golden light, and countless golden lights around it penetrated into Chen Mu's body from all directions. Chen Mu grew and became bigger quickly. Of course, this speed was far slower than the speed of the banyan tree before, but it was definitely not to be underestimated. In just one day, Chen Mu's figure had become a behemoth of half a meter in height. An old man who was fishing by the lake looked at Chen Mu's changes, and his eyes widened. Become a sea squirt larva and eat a brain first. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 170. The old man is not the only one fishing by the river. Chen Mu's fishing attracted the attention of the people around him. Is this a cactus? Such a big cactus. Those people who were originally fishing by the river now surrounded Chen Mu and looked at him. Looking at Chen Mu, The old man with wrinkles on his face looked at the cactus in front of him. It's strange. I came here a week ago. There was no such thing here at that time. Could it be that someone brought it here by car last night? Well, it's possible. It's so big. It must not grow so big in a few days. I have never seen such a big cactus. It's incredible. I heard that the inside of the cactus can be eaten. I don't know what the inside of such a big cactus tastes like. One of the more robust men took out a saber and said, "Take some out and you will know." As he said that, he walked to the cactus and was about to start with the saber. The old man saw it and said hurriedly, "Hey, young man, what are you doing?" The man looked at the old man. The old man said, "This thing was probably brought here by someone else and planted. It must have taken a lot of effort. This is greening. If you cut it with a knife, this cactus will not look good." The man curled his lips. "Such a big cactus, what's the harm in cutting off a little? If you want it to be beautiful, won't it be ugly if you find a sculptor to carve it?" He was too lazy to say more, and directly took the saber and stabbed the cactus. Clang, the saber was like stabbing into an extremely hard steel plate, and it couldn't penetrate at all. The man was stunned. Suddenly, the thorns on the cactus began to grow suddenly. Puff, puff. Accompanied by the sound of blood and flesh separating, those sharp thorns directly penetrated the man's body. The man's body slowly softened, but it was only because he was supported by the thorns of the cactus that his body did not fall down. The people watching nearby saw this and their faces suddenly changed. Ah! Accompanied by a scream, the people around ran away. The man's figure slowly turned into golden light and dissipated. The thorns on the cactus slowly returned to their original appearance. Chen Mu muttered in his heart, "There are so many people who are looking for death recently." Chen Mu continued to swallow and grow. A little bit of fresh water sank into Chen Mu's body, and under photosynthesis, it was converted into energy by Chen Mu along with carbon dioxide. And Chen Mu comfortably enjoyed the feeling of growth. Maybe because of the size of the cactus itself, Chen Mu couldn't absorb energy as crazy as the banyan tree. But Chen Mu was not in a hurry. Chen Mu had endless time, and he was also used to loneliness and solitude. Humans are divided into two types of people, one is extroverts and the other is introverts. Extroverts are cheerful and sunny, good at socializing, like lively places, and like crowds. Introverts like to be alone. As long as there is one more person around, he will feel noisy. In fact, introverts are just a matter of personality. This is not a mistake. Sometimes introverts are more likely to concentrate on one thing. Extroverts are like Lubuletin, with full military strength. Introverts are like Zhujiang, with full wisdom. Of course, you have to use the strengths of your personality. You can't let Lubuletin be a military advisor and let Zhujiang fight. Some people like quietness, some people like movement, each has its own advantages. The question is how to bring out the benefits. Chen Mu himself is an introvert and a rational person. On the other side, in a certain city, Xiaoning, a voice came from the side. Hearing this voice, Chen Xiaoning came back to her senses and looked at the colleague who was talking next to her. Seeing her colleague, Xiaonian was sitting at her desk, sorting out the documents on the table. When she saw Chen Xiaoning looking over, she smiled. "What are you thinking about? Are you thinking so deeply?" Chen Xiaoning said, "I think I'm thinking about someone I hate." Xiaonian was slightly startled, and she smiled. "What hateful person? Could it be that our Xiaoning also has a lover?" Chen Xiaoning rolled her eyes at Xiaonian. "No. Really? Then tell me about that person." Xiaonian came over, leaned her face directly on Chen Xiaoning's cheek, and rubbed it. "Well, good Xiaoning, tell me about it." Chen Xiaoning was a little helpless, and said, "I'm thinking about my brother." "Your brother?" Xiaonian was slightly startled. She looked at Chen Xiaoning and said, "You have another brother." Chen Xiaoning hummed, "He's dead." "Ah, I'm sorry." Xiaonian lowered her head. Chen Xiaoning said, "It's been many years, and that guy is a bastard, it's good that he died." Xiaonian was stunned. She looked at Chen Xiaoning strangely. Chen Xiaoning was too lazy to say anything more, but she couldn't help but think of some things that happened before. About her brother Chen Mu. Chen Mu was always thinking about something. People around him would cry when they encountered painful things, and some people would laugh when they encountered happiness. When Chen Mu was bored, he raised 2 hamsters with his sister. After 2 years of raising them, the 2 hamsters got old. Died. Chen Mu directly threw the hamster's body into the trash can, which was considered a disposal. Later, when Chen Xiaoning returned home and learned about the hamster's death, she burst into tears. Chen Mu was watching from the side, and he couldn't understand her emotions. "It's dead, it's just a pet. What's there to cry about?" When Chen Xiaoning learned that Chen Mu threw the hamster into the trash can, Chen Xiaoning cried even louder. Chen Mu just felt a little puzzled. This is of course Chen Xiaoning's perception of Chen Mu. As Chen Mu's sister, Chen Xiaoning has seen Chen Mu's weird performance when he encountered some things. For Chen Xiaoning, Chen Mu is just a cold-blooded and ruthless trash. Of course, Chen Mu doesn't care about these. He doesn't care about Chen Xiaoning's opinion either. What a bastard! Chen Xiaoning couldn't help frowning. At the same time, it was already night. After entering the night, Chen Mu's body was glowing with golden light, and the golden light flew out from the huge cactus, and his whole body turned into a griffin. Chen Mu looked back at the giant cactus behind him that was already 6 meters high. Sure enough, Chen Mu muttered. Just as he expected. Ever since the system told him that he could keep the body of the banyan tree for the next evolution, Chen Mu understood what was going on. In fact, each template is actually equivalent to each of Chen Mu's bodies. He can separate each template, then use one of the templates to act. As a plant, it is too boring, especially at night, so he decided to find something to do. For example, study how to get these 2 abilities first.